mentioned in your talk there about the lattice structure
Yeah.
was over the spring. I know where that is.
Yeah.
Everybody probably does.
Yeah.
I just thought maybe it might be, we could figure out some way to acquire that and maybe place it somewhere, you know, because I can remember that structure when I was a kid.
Yeah.
When the, the scout hut used to sit on the hill there. So that structure was there as long as the town owned, in my lifetime, as long as the town owned it, until sold it to the college, or the church did. So it's just sitting there rotting it down, but I don't know, something maybe we could incorporate that, that's just a thought of it.
Yeah,
It's a piece of history.
Yeah, sure. And to the point you made at the last meeting, I talked to the mayor about how the sort of adoption of the budget time, we could maybe do a more encompassing sort of talk from council and from the mayor. I think it'd be good to recap some of the things that we did the last year, but then also be able to talk about the things we budgeted for in the coming year. So
I agree.
that was the
Yeah, I
thought
think we have a lot of things going on at different times. There's a lot of things we need the public to know, but I think it'd be good if we could get all those together and present them all at one time. But we got a lot of things, good things going on and a lot of things planned for the future. But I think if we get them all in one presentation, I think it'd be really good.
For sure. Yeah. Okay. Well, Mr. Mayor, I threw a West Wind quote down there for you.
Nice.
So just to, I put this slide in here just to make sure we talked about it. The mayor touched on most of these things. These are really the items that were in the strategic plan from last year that are goals that we checked off and accomplished. So mixed beverages and pursuing or continuing business recruitment. We talked about a planner grant writer, and we ended up with something better, which was a fellow. And Grayson's not in here to say that, to hear me say that, but
Would it still be a fellow if it was a lady?
yes. Working on the sewer extension policy. We've got a Parks Master Plan that should be, or an agreement for the Parks Master Plan that should be coming before you in April. Traffic calming through the Safe Streets for All grant, and then continuing DOT advocacy for several projects. So talking about what's next, this is the sort of start of the brainstorming session for the day. I have two or three sort of specific things that I want to make sure that we talk about first, and then just kind of put all of the sort of thoughts that we've talked about from last year throughout the year into this, I can't think what that's called, Word cloud, yeah, thanks Tracy. So put that in there to just kind of help us work through some of those things. But the first thing that I've got on my list that was really the last lingering thing from the strategic plan last year is Old Town Hall. So throughout the year we've kind of talked about some different options, and to recap that, the 4 options that we've really got that I'd like for you all to discuss is listing that property for sale. Parceling off either the parcel to the back of the gym or to the front of the gym, and then listing that for sale to see what attention it might get. I think in the same vein as listing it for sale is potential land swap with Gardner Webb. I think listing it for sale would maybe sort of generate some of that interest from them, or maybe it generates interest from someone else. Tearing it down, we've talked about that. That's got a little bit of a price tag tied to it, but that would obviously clear out that area and open up the park a little bit more. And then we've also talked to the Development Finance Initiative at the UNC School of Government, and they would be willing to come in and conduct a study on what to do with it, and kind of get some public input and see what kind of the highest and best use of that area would be. So, who wants to start us off? Thoughts on those options?
I'm curious to hear more about the UNC study. Like, do we have, is it just a rough verbal discussion, or is there like a proposal from them already in place? Or?
I don't have a formal proposal, I have, just a proposal that they would come in and do some high level things. The discussion with them was, that they thought because it was attached to the university, that it should probably be something that's done jointly. But I didn't get a feeling that they were gonna come in and have like a new answer for us. It was gonna sort of be, you all should try and partner with the university and do something with it. And so, I like the idea of bringing in a third party to kind of mediate that, but I'm worried that we're gonna spend $50,000 to just get an answer we already kind of know. Or nothing, not a new idea, I guess.
I would really hate to see us lose control of that park,
Okay.
you know, as far as selling it to a private, unless we had a lot of control over what we're gonna do with it.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
My reasoning being, you know, we have this really nice park that's kind of hidden. And, you know, I would like to see us be able to do something to enhance that, rather than, I would just hate to see us just lose control of what's gonna happen.
Sure.
Whatever that is.
Yeah, now we do have some, it would fall within the design standards of the downtown overlay district, so there'd be some strict standards there, but it sounds like it goes a little bit further than that. You would still wanna make sure that we have even further control of maybe what goes in there.
Well, like I said, I just have a fear that, you know, what might go there. I just think it'd be great if we could figure out some way to use that to enhance the park,
Okay.
rather than, you know, just, because a lot of people come to town, they don't even know the park's there. And it's a really nice park, and I'd like to see us, we could find some way to highlight it and make it a, you know, a point of interest for the town. And some people, you know, it gets kind of dusty dark, they don't go back there because they're, you know, it's kind of hidden back there. And,
Related to that, a conversation I had with Mr. Dennis Terry, who's doing the design for the signage for Jerry for the park. We talked about putting a sign, like a smaller sign, up on the corner of Branch and Main Street to sort of signify that the park's back that way. But so it's a smaller sort of version of making sure that people kind of know it's back there. What other thoughts?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time thinking about the old town hall portion, so we really have three portions that we have: the town hall, the front lot, right? Then we have the old police department portion of it, and then we have the gymnasium. And so, without knowing the full condition of all three of those, it's sort of one of these things, what can go in there? So as I started thinking about it, in connection with the rest of the facility, with what Garden Web owns, several years ago, I talked to, with Chevrolet Theater or somebody, because they have a stage and a theater type setup in there, and we talked about, you know, something sort of like the Flat Rock Playhouse in Hendersonville. We talked about like Don Gibson Theater over in Shelby, and you know, we're really home of Earl Scruggs, right? Why could we not partner and have an idea to have a total, I guess, collaborative effort with Gardner Webb, other entities to try to refurbish, bring something back to life, and we could have our own sort of Don Gibson Theater there in conjunction with Gardner Webb, but call it the Earl Scruggs Theater, or bring groups in. But it's going to take a bigger vision. I mean, you're talking about having to bring the facility up to code again, or heating and air, roofing. I mean, a lot of different things. But the flip side of that is demolishing it all. And like Tommy said, and selling off to somebody else, and we lose a really valuable piece of property on a big corridor. But you know, maybe there's partnerships there. Maybe there's an opportunity to partner and have a revenue interest stream other than just the building.
I guess that's kind of why the UNC study piqued my interest when you mentioned it, because, you know, do they have the resources available to go in and do the risk assessment of a demolition, you know, the risk of for sale, partnership connections with Gardner Webb, and, you know, what the return on investment would be on any of those options. It'd be nice if they had the resources to be able to lay that all out for us, instead of us sitting here trying to parse it together over multiple discussions.
Sure.
I think it'd be an opportunity to lay out all three options for us, right, on a, you know, a formal report, and compare it all equally with a baseline of metrics that we agree to. that's kind of where I was going with the UNC study.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that there's a lot of the thoughts that we already have, right? But I think it would make it succinct, you know, and make it, we can compare notes all together.
Yeah, I think a study like that could help us establish whether we can develop into commercial use for vendors and other, other multi-uses. We had a Bowling Springs Business Association, sort of like Shelby's got the USA, that sort of steers some of that in business recruitment. Because it is a lot of square footage as far as building, and it would be great to have somebody in there, but at what cost? And then we can control that either through the business association or through who we wanted to rent it to. But again, it's a lot of effort, and it might be easier in the long run to demolish it than start on it.
Yeah, because the condition of the building is not good, is it, Mike?
Not good.
You know, maybe might be a financial burden. It
Yeah.
might be as much to bring it up to where it's runnable as it would be to,
Just get rid of it and get the research.
And a lot of times it's more because of codes.
that's right.
When it was built, it didn't meet.
Yeah, okay.
And I think
I
today's
remember-
codes,
I remember once, we actually had some fundraisers a long time ago to redo the cafeteria to make it, where community could use it for events, weddings and things like that, and there's a lot of asbestos there, so, a lot of asbestos. But when the building was constructed, you do a lot of asbestos. I would think the gymnasium is probably the best condition because of the garden web, bringing it up to code.
Yeah, they've done a good job maintaining it, the rest of the team and everything.
So,
And the council room's not in bad shape, but
No, it's
the
not,
rest, the
probably
rest
the
of it.
next, but the gymnasium is probably.
I guess my question is, it sounds to me like we're laying out the criteria and the concerns that we have. Do we have the resources and the staff to be able to put that all together and go chase down those market decisions? Or do we put together a request for proposal to UNC to see if they have the resources to do that outside of our regular business, right? And put together like, hey, if you do demolition, the market's gonna cost this, a new building's gonna cost this, upgrades are gonna cost, X, Y, Z. Or you sell it and here's the risk of a new person coming in and building whatever, and a full assessment, right? Not just come in and tell us what we already know.
Yeah.
Like, we could detail that out in an RFP, and if they don't feel they have the resources to provide that proposal, then we know that's not the answer for us. So,
And then do the other underlying thing, that'd be the cost of that proposal.
right,
And what we think we're gonna get for it. I mean, I'm not opposed to that at all, at a certain cost.
I think it's a way to leverage, to get to a decision sooner instead of it lingering through, a couple of years of time.
I agree, because whatever, we've been talking about this even before I was on the town council a long time, ever since the new town hall was built. And it's just continued to deteriorate, mostly hadn't it, since we moved out.
do we know Garden Web's interest? I know you talked to them, they said they weren't interested, or?
They said that they weren't interested, and it was mainly because they didn't have plans for that, so they didn't have a budget for it, so they just kind of weren't interested. I get the feeling that they would be interested if, we were gonna tell it to somebody else and they, had the opportunity to get it, they probably would move a little quicker.
Or we're gonna give it to them.
But I think that's the next hurdle is, yeah, they're gonna want it.
I'd say that'd be their,
And I think Dave Whitcaster told me that they had mitigated the asbestos problem in their portion of the building. And so really, as we're looking at what I believe to be the viable part, or the usable part would be the old town hall. And maybe not the old portion of the police department, all that back there. And, but again, it's a huge endeavor. I think Caleb's on the right track. I mean, we need a really comprehensive look at it, and that costs money too. So but it's not about the money. It's about what's our plan, what's our vision, and what are we going to do? Because one option is do nothing, right?
and that'll take care of itself, it'll fall in.
Yeah. But then
Well, and that's the opportunity
But then
cost,
that
right?
detracts from the town, and you have no out there, there's plenty of places, there's plenty of old school mills, vacant buildings, and, is that really what we wanna be known for?
No. I don't-
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the cost of the proposal of the service would be the opportunity cost to decrease our probability of picking the wrong selection. You know what I mean? So like,
Yeah.
hey, if we're gonna spend whatever it is, I'm gonna say $100,000, that $100,000 may save us a few $100,000 in making the wrong decision. So, I think you can all kind of see where my mind is on my preference.
And I'm not opposed to that, you know, just, the cost would be mine.
Yeah.
And the, maybe, once we put out the RFP, the assurance that we're gonna get something for our money, you know, other than things we already know.
Well, we can outline in the RFP what we would, town manager, what we would, you know, want to have, firms respond with.
Yeah, what the deliverables would be.
And then we'll ask for the price, and so, I mean, it may be that we get those back and don't wanna do it because it's too expensive, or, maybe we're surprised and, you know, we reevaluate at that point.
Did Grayson not have an estimate on tearing part or all of it down at one time?
Tearing it down was at least $250,000.
Did that include the rest of the building or not?
I don't think
No,
so.
I don't
It
know.
was leaving it.
No, it was-
And I would be in favor of demolishing it myself. I would be in favor of the town maybe taking control of it and using it for something else, pickleball. Spindale is, you know, they built some courts, indoor and outdoor courts, and they're fixing, the town is fixing to have a big pickleball tournament there. There's a lot of, pickleball is, like it or not, fastest growing sport in the United States for the last 3 years. And it's something that senior adults do mostly. And, you know, we got a lot of stuff for the younger kids, but if you want me to, I'd fill the town all up. Make me, I mean, seriously, there's a lot of interest there.
Well, is Gardner Webb interested in selling their portion of the building to the town, and at what cost?
The only discussion we had about that was they.
Or land swap, either way.
Yeah, I don't know that they would really be interested in selling it because they don't have space for those students anywhere else on campus. But the number that they threw out when we talked about that was, I think, $3 million. So we'd have to have $3 million to, and I don't know if that's to build a new building to move those students or what, but.
They might get a little more interested if they think we're going to tear our portion down or something like that. You know, it might.
Well, I did tell him in that same meeting that we were gonna tear it down, and he said, you can't do that. I said, I'll go there with a hammer right after this, but. So I don't know that that's, you know, I don't think
Why did
that's.
they think we can't do that?
Oh, it's
They're-
connected, I think, but
Yeah.
we can do it.
Yeah,
I mean, it belongs to us.
yeah,
And
that's,
there's really a good break point there for air,
Mm.
there's, I mean, one wall there, one common wall there,
Yeah.
pretty much.
and I think there's been, I mean, you know, I've heard some things from David Waycaster about wanting to get their operations on the other side of the street, so that maintenance building that's back there would maybe be a potential land swap opportunity, but, my concern about that is are they gonna wanna just do a straight swap, and is the value gonna be there for, you know, the parcel that's next to the communications building to the left, if you're facing it, and the maintenance building, and then our portion.
So maybe that's a criteria in the RFP is, work to identify the challenges of immediate stakeholders and interested parties.
Yeah.
You know, and potentially be a mitigator
Yeah, we can let the consultant go to Gardner Webb and
Yeah.
ask if, yeah.
on our
if
behalf
they have
and
an
try
interest,
to
too.
be a middle ground for us.
And they actually had it was some Garden Web faculty, I've actually been to something in the small auditorium. Dr. Joe Webb, you know, he had a little community band or something, did a little concert there, but, so they actually, you know, had a couple of things there. He's housed there,
Mm.
Dr. Webb is, well, he was till they,
Yeah, there's something
but he's not
actually,
there anymore.
But it could be something that we could gain traction on with our downtown music, you know, series and our website, you know, having music there and that, and there's a nice little courtyard area in between that's grass. I mean, for a lot of different applications and uses, but we don't have that part of the building. we have the dilapidated part that needs to either be brought up to code or demolished. And maybe we say, okay, let's get rid of the old police department portion and the old kindergarten building back there, and we put our effort into restoring and saving the front with an idea of having the entire front of the property or something. But I think there is great partnerships that we could sort of work on, but it's gonna take requests for proposals. I mean, you know, it's gonna take a pretty good plan and collaborative effort to do something.
Just spur of the moment thought.
That's what the state's all about, do it, Caleb.
The buildings that we're proposing in front of Town Hall, what if we offered them as a duplicate setup where the old Town Hall was in partnership with Gardner Webb, and they get a portion of it for student classes and stuff like that? It's like a long-term rent or lease.
Yeah,
With the understanding that, hey, what we're proposing to put back in place is gonna match what's just around the corner in front of the Town Hall. We'll have some uniformity in town and a new building for them to do a long-term lease out of for classes and.
I personally am not interested in too many partnerships with Gardner Webb. It's been my experience that we usually come up in on the short end of that stick. And with that, I've been a little disappointed in the web stock. All the promotions that I've heard have been Gardner Webb is having web stock. I've seen very little mention of the town of Bowling Springs in their communications, and that disappoints me some. It was better last year, I think, than this year. You know, I saw an article, it was Gardner Webb is having web stock on it too. Nowhere in that article it mentioned town of Bowling Springs.
Second page, I had a quote from me, I think. You had to flip
Well,
it.
But, and it is, my personal opinion is Gardner Webb is really interested as long as it's crossing the street. When we ask for something to come back, it's different. Little $250 stage.
Yeah.
Crazy. So,
Well, and that's where we have that weird dynamic where Gardner Webb is building everything they need for their students within the confines of their property. And we're looking at business recruitment on how to help the greater town and bring people in. And so we're in direct competition at times.
we are.
And then so it's natural for them to crow and to shout loud us that it's their whatever. And that's just university setting. You work for the university.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, like, if without us, they couldn't have web stock.
Oh, yeah, no.
Without our police department, without us agreeing to get DOT to allow us,
Yeah,
you know, that it couldn't happen.
yeah. I'm
Where it's
totally
gonna happen in the
agreeing.
venue without us, and I just think we should be getting more.
That's fair. I mean, I guess my point was that there's an opportunity there to present another option, right? And maybe it's not a long-term lease, maybe they buy a suite or two, or whatever they need, or one half of the building, whatever. But if we propose a solution that is unified and new,
What other land do we have on the west side that would be a land swap that Gardner Webb would be interested in to trade out? Or even South Main Street, do we have anything?
I don't think so. Mike or anybody, think of anything?
But yeah, Tommy, I'm agreeing with you, yeah, they have the tendency to, it's all about Gardner Webb, because
That's who they are.
they have marketing, they have people that, that focus on spending those things, and that's not a negative toward them either, that's what they.
No, I'm not, not either, I just,
I got the font bigger this year.
You what?
Notice that? I got the font bigger this year.
But I don't know how much they'll be open to letting the town utilize the amphitheater for like music on lanes.
Yeah.
Could we possibly have our own stage area? I mean, it doesn't have to be anything elaborate. In that master park plan, where we do our stuff back there, and it's all incorporated with the park and
Yeah.
everything else.
yeah, I think a really good partnership would have been if they had agreed to put the amphitheater maybe where our ball fields are, which make it, you know, and I think maybe we talked about that a little bit
last year.
It'd be a great partnership. Here again, and I'm not beating Gardner Webb up, but, and rightly so, I guess, for your Gardner Webb, they want it on their side of the road. They're not, this doesn't sound good, but they're not too interested on our side of the road. And I understand that, that's what they're about. We're about the other side, so I think we have to be real careful that we protect our side of the road. I think the town hall property and the Gardner Webb property is the most valuable piece of property in downtown area.
I think so too.
What else we got except from the town hall? So, that's another reason hate for us to lose control of it, whatever happens there.
But there was mention of trails and connectivity, and Forest City's a pretty good example. You go and look at what they've done with rail trail and how it goes to the, what do they call it, pops, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
They have that amphitheater back there.
Yeah.
You know, and then it's all connected back to town. You can walk all of that.
It's really nice too back there, I've been to several concerts,
Yes,
it's
it
really
is.
nice. And I hope that Gardner Webb will be open, but I'm not holding my breath, unfortunately.
Well, the other idea I had for the backside, back where the old kindergarten building is, and police department, I mean, it could be a great place for a farmer's market type situation like Shelby has, that attracts vendors and different things, music, a lot of different things. But again, it's doing some demolition and building but, you know, we had some traction many years ago on a farmer's market sort of back there, and then nothing really materialized because there just wasn't enough interest or whatever, but I think that's, you know, I know that Gastonia has farmer's market, for our city, and different communities have this building or structure, call it whatever you wanna call it, that's a farmer's market, but they have multi-uses in it, so.
Pavilion.
Pavilion, yeah, sorry, my brain wouldn't let me pull that word. Pavilion.
Yeah, I mean, you got a good idea though, and it's just gonna be open structure.
And that'll be something that the Parks Master Plan would really dive into, is
Yeah,
reusing that
exactly.
space and,
With all that, yeah.
and the- and the-
Multi-use.
like it.
I think the farmer's market idea keeps coming up, you know, I think even before then, you know, I think we got enough in front of the town hall would be a great, you know, in the meantime,
Yeah.
type of farmer's market, you know, where
What do you think about Old Town Hall, Mr. Mayor?
I think it's a difficult puzzle to solve, much like the sewer extension. It's tough to wait because of the structure, but waiting, and with potential new leadership at some point, maybe the relationship changes and we can get a better offer about, you know, through it all, because I think that it's a difficult situation because we are very much tied together with Gardner Webb. I mean, I don't know what a study would show about, you know, what they provide to the town in terms of, you know, the business and employment and all that, but I think it's important too that we anticipate, at least longer term, what it means for Bowling Springs to operate with a reduced Gardner Webb. I mean, colleges across the country are struggling. And so I think it's a tough line. How much do we want to make, you know, strengthen the partnership, but at the same time, we've got to look after our interests as well. And so, but I love the cultural aspect of a flat rock theater that can be used for local pickers, and I mean, Earl Scruggs Center is definitely on board with, they recognize that Earl Scruggs is from around here. I mean, there's movement in that direction, and so any momentum that we can get moving forward towards opening that loop as a cultural downtown with farmers markets, all that kind of stuff, I love it all. I like that direction, but how do you get there? Do you blow the place up and start over? Or, I mean, it'd be fun to watch. I don't know.
And I think the reasons you're saying it, the reason we keep kicking that can down the road, it's just so difficult to come up with
I mean, even before doing how much everything, like you said, we can put the RFP out and then see how much it's gonna cost and then not move forward with it. But I mean, how willing are we going to be to move forward with any of these solutions? And is it worth paying for a study knowing that we aren't going to move forward with any of them? Because we've been trying to move forward for a long time and we just can't quite. So I don't know. That was no help at all.
That's why this is built on the agenda for today.
it. What about the cost for none of them? Any less mess if we just let it fall in and then haul it off?
Yeah.
You brought it.
Because that will happen with the roof and stuff, unless we're gonna have to spend some money there
Yeah.
to keep it from structurally damaging. You know, if the roof starts leaking,
Yeah, we wanna have control of the demolition, not nature.
Well, and, to Mr. Thomas's point, when Gardner Webb replaced the roof on the communications building, they replaced the roof on the old, council room
Yeah.
and the front offices there. So
Yeah.
the flat roof part of it is still in bad shape, but the front part is in good shape.
I understand the issue.
But
So-
heating areas, there's heating area issues and some of those kind of things that are not as costly, but if we're talking about structurally, the roof's good, the building is sound. Asbestos mitigation is a terrible problem, but I'm just saying, if we focus on, say, just the front portion, and we have an idea that we're gonna be done with the back portion or something, and that sort of helps us a little bit better in figuring out, hey, are we gonna parcel this thing out? And what are we gonna do? And that'd be a long-term, more strategic plan, but focus on salvaging what we can, and that's the best way to do it.
So, to Mayor Thomas's, some of the things I picked up on his concerns, seems like we are unclear on timeline and maybe stakeholders with Gardner Webb. How do we become more strategic on those missing puzzle pieces? Do we have an idea of what that timeline of those different stakeholders might look like? And do we need to start reaching out and building those relationships with a broader audience at Gardner Webb now, before we decide if we're willing to spend money on a proposal?
I mean, I think that's ideal. I just don't know.
So, I don't know if we have those answers yet. Is there a way to find out?
I think there's been an intent to,
Asking.
I think there has been an intent on our part to reach out,
Yeah.
I think so
to
too.
build those relationships on a broader level, and with limited success.
Yeah, I mean, the initial conversation was, let's do something with this, and then I even, at one point, talked to, I heard something from Bill that was like, I was over there thinking about what we could do about this, and I said, okay, let's have a meeting, and then we had a meeting, and it was like, we don't have plans or money for it, so we don't want to do anything. Yeah, they are going
So they
through.
wanna sell us the building for $3 million that the county gave them.
Correct.
And
I
the
mean, I
tax,
was involved in
tax
that.
value's
I
like
know the school
$750.
for them.
Yeah, it's about 725.
And right up to the very end, the town was gonna get it all. And then the chairman of the trustees just happened to be a county commissioner, and, I mean, right up to the last minute, the town was gonna get it all, and then all of a sudden, they're gonna get back up to Garden Webb.
But I mean, I
Water
think,
under the dam.
I think at the very least, we can move forward with the Parks Master Plan. I mean, I think these ideas of, it, you know, I love the loop. I mean, that whole walkability area to increase traffic and get people outside, I mean, somehow incorporating, you know, the cemetery there, which probably isn't going anywhere, but, you know, but cultural events and farmers markets where kids are playing while the parents are able to do their thing. I mean, that's community stuff, and that's what we've been about in a lot of ways. And so even moving forward with what that would look like in the event that we are able to put that final piece together, I think that's our responsibility for sure. And then maybe one day maybe it'll all work out one day.
You know, to Caleb's point, who are the stakeholders at Gardner Webb that we need to be having a discussion with, other than Dr. Downs? I mean, who is it that really controls and monies?
Well, I mean, if Dr. Downs is the ultimate decider, who on his team can we help influence to help?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying,
Right?
You know, somebody's gonna bring to him a proposal and say, hey, we've done the numbers, here's all these things,
Yeah.
and he's ultimately gonna make a decision, but there are people under him that we can talk to and lobby, and if that's the right word, and
Right.
have relationship and discussion with.
It carries a lot of different weight if one of his staff members just says, here's a presentation from Golden Springs.
So the West Coast.
Versus, hey, I really talked to him, I think we're onto something here, guys, and we should really consider this. That carries a lot of different weight, and I'm not saying that doesn't happen right now, but I wonder how many more voices we can get to do that for us.
The last meeting we had, it was him and David Waycaster, and then the CFO, Tim Shuey.
also knows who pays his, who gives him his
And he knows what happens to those who don't.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm just saying, I think there's a opportunity for strengthening relationships and discussion dialogue, and if not, then we just walk away from it, right? I mean, it's, you make an attempt and then give our best effort, not that we're gonna give away stuff, and we know our interests and our strengths, and collectively we can be stronger together, or we can part ways.
Or we can just let ours fall in.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we should, even though that's not our intent, I don't think we would do that. I still think we have to hold that card and say, hey, we're not gonna spend any money on it, you know, how's it gonna look? So I think we need to try to, as much as we possibly can, to whatever limits, stay in the driver's seat. Otherwise, they'll run over us.
I wanna be careful there. If we use that leverage, that we don't set ourselves up for a potential, I hate to say it, lawsuit, because we knew better and we chose not to do anything. I'll just let it fall in, right?
It's our building.
Because I guess if we're thinking strategy, they're already thinking that, right? They're just saying that, but they can't let it fall in because they already know they're gonna fix it.
I will never vote for $1 to fix it, unless we have a real intent of what's going, just to shore it up or something, unless we're gonna refurbish it, rent it, whatever.
I guess to
I
the
wouldn't
point,
vote.
let's think ahead of their next step too, right? This isn't us versus them, but it is a partnership, and if they're being strategic about on their side, we need to be a step ahead of their strategy as well. Right, so, I just wanna be careful there is all I guess I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I don't disagree with you, I don't think we should spend money to upgrade it, if we're gonna spend any money on it, it's gonna be to demolish it.
Yeah, or we have, we know when we spend money on it, we know what's gonna happen
Right.
with the facility. We got a plan there, there's gonna be businesses coming in or something, just to keep it.
I agree, I wouldn't be in favor of selling, it's too close to the park that we've
I
already.
agree,
spent
that'd
all
be
that
my
money.
last.
And you'll never get it back unless you pay double, triple, or 5 times what you sold it for.
Yep, I agree. I don't think, as long as I'm on council, I could ever vote to sell it without there's a real, something really good there.
Yeah, so I think we're back to get the RFPs out, see if we can get a couple options out there for a proposal and see what makes sense.
Yeah, so that's one of the two things that I've heard is RFP and continued conversations with Gardner Webb. Is that the consensus to move forward?
It is, I'd just like to see us make sure that when we come back next year, we're not still saying what we're gonna do with it.
Yeah.
That we do something, move forward with it. Like I said, we just keep kicking the can down the road.
I know every other thing in that plan we've checked off this year except for this one, so I'm ready to get it checked off too.
And who knows, it may be here next year.
Y'all keep saying that. I feel like you're looking at me, but I think you.
No, really, I was saying about council.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Council talk. That's okay. We'll work on an RFP and we'll let next week cool down with Gardner Webb, but then we'll continue those conversations for sure.
But stuff like this, and I know we're not supposed to talk about money, but it's a big picture money idea.
Sure.
Stuff like this costs a lot of money. We don't have it, but we have a lot of loan capacity.
I guess that's where I was wanting to see what UNC could provide us in that aspect of return on investment, right? Like what are our market options, including, construction costs, replacement costs, plus debt service and all that, so.
Yeah. And previous councils, and this one as well, have been very conservative with borrowing money, and that's a good thing to a certain extent.
I agree.
Where you're not borrowing any money to try to grow anything.
Right.
I mean, eventually you're gonna have to go out there and do it.
We also kind of got our hands slapped for having too much in savings, right?
Well, no.
To some degree.
They changed the rules.
Yes,
and some of that, yeah.
Yes and no.
We used to be in really good shape, and then they changed the rules and said, well, we're not in good shape, is that they like for us to be, don't spend money.
But same shape, whether, regardless of what they said, you know.
Yeah, we're in
Very
good shape.
good
Yeah,
shape.
yeah, great.
They just changed this benchmark there a little bit.
Yeah.
But Pat's point, we have to look at spending some money and borrowing money in some way if we want to grow and, you know, unless we have a lot of investors that come in, want to develop. And that gets into that recruitment piece. And we have more capacity, but traditionally we just held off and saved for a rainy day. And at the expense of that, the town's really remained the same amenities, same growth, same as it has many years.
Sure. You heard it wrong, right there.
And two, I think,
Got it recorded.
I'm pretty sure this is an accurate statement, not, you know, Max Hamrick is a really good friend of mine, but Max was a very frugal mayor. He was, I worked with him on finances at the church, and he's, you know, he was, to me, he was almost frugal to a fault, like we're talking about, you know, he just, that just not, just wasn't him. And to me, having dealt with him at the church, you know, to me, is to their detriment, you know, now they've got some big expenses that, things they didn't fix, but how they're just getting bigger. So, I agree with that. If we want to grow, you know, I think we're going to do whatever it takes. Within reason, to make that grow.
All right. That sounds good on, Old Town Hall. We'll move forward with that and, keep those other thoughts in mind when, we start having our budget meetings. The next thing I had on my list was, more, sort of a check-in. We kind of talked about this previously, but we have a new, upgraded emergency interconnect with Cleveland County Water on North Main Street in Prairie Homestead area. So now we have a connection with Cleveland County Water and a connection with the city of Shelby. When we had NC Rural Water come to us a year and a half ago, they talked about how the potential lower cost of buying some water from Cleveland County Water could be a cost savings for the utility fund. We have all that sort of set up now, and just kind of wanted to yes or no whether we wanted to explore that. I think we would look at it in terms of our first budget meeting and buying a percentage of water from Cleveland County Water and buying a larger percentage from the city of Shelby still, but doing something to kind of save some money there to put towards our infrastructure upgrades and continue down that path. So, do we have any thoughts on exploring that?
I'm for it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, we don't know what we don't know until we start investigating, right? Put an analysis here.
And our biggest concern or thing we want to make sure is that we don't upset Shelby. We have a great relationship with them. We have a great connection with them. All things considered, the connection with Shelby is better than the connection with Cleveland County Water because of the booster pump system that we've got. So we don't want to lose that, but we do want to make sure that we have a backup because we are a purchase system. That if something did happen with Shelby or with our booster pump, that we've got another connection we can flip on. So
Yeah, I think if we remain transparent with them that we're simply trying to put in a contingency plan.
Yeah, you
And
have
that'll
water
be the
system
primary.
compared to that we're just looking for another cheaper outlet. I mean, the whole purpose is to have interconnectivity that, and to save us some money, but yeah, I don't want to damage that relationship with Shelby. They've been really good to us over the years, and they've passed on the cost that it was to treat the water. And, but for us to do our own water treatment plant to pull off the Broad River storage, I mean, you're talking about pumping that uphill to Bowling Spring. We can't have a reservoir, from my understanding, with the Lake Hauser, and, you know, that would have been a great revenue source for us, to have our own reservoir, our own water system now. I think the Army engineers shot that down or something, didn't they? But I like the idea. I wish the county had a unified water system that, you know, instead of Kings Mountain, Shelby, Cleveland, I mean, it's just,
I agree.
but I don't, that's something outside of our control. But I think opening up that discussion, dialogue, and seeing what that can help us. Because we might experience a military drought situation. We generally do. And it might get worse. So.
I think a good example of that countywide water and sewer systems, plenty of church roads. We got plenty of church roads on one side of the road, it's our water. On the other side is Upper Cleveland, so it depends on which side of the road you live on, which water you get. To me, that's duplication of service. But-
And to the emergency side of it, since it's technically right now just an emergency interconnect, they had to rebuild the booster pump, out here last weekend. So Mike and his team were here, and we had water coming in from Cleveland County Water, because we needed it, so, something that, the connection's definitely useful, but yeah, if we can save a little bit of money and have another reliable source too, I think it makes sense. Okay.
First talking about water, now we have the water tank, it has a capacity, and that capacity is for a certain amount of time. Is there any reason to look at a second type reservoir holding tank that would be benefit to the town, so that we would have enough emergency capacity?
I don't think so. I mean, especially with the new connection we've got with Cleveland County Water, I don't think there would be a need for that. And longer term, I know they have talked about, Cleveland County has talked about putting a tank south of town, so they would have another supply that we could pull off of. But Mike, do you have anything to add there?
No, you know, the talk was that we can even do away with our tank, that Cleveland County built their own,
Yeah.
built their tank
Where are they talking about building?
south. Don't know exact location,
Yeah.
but
Just somewhere south of town.
Okay. And they built one up there on Gale for 120, outside 74.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, I see stuff that happen like in East Palestine, Ohio or Pennsylvania. I mean, where their water system's really compromised to a certain extent, and, you know, if you don't have, capacity for storage and other things, but not that have a railway system going through Bowling Green or anything like that. But just, long term, we were in that drought in 2002, that was horrific. And, nobody had water, but anyway, just throwing it out there, whether we needed to look at that, or what the long-term plan was.
Yeah, I think as we explore these two connections, we can see where that conversation goes and see what their future plans are, and then adjust our future plans if we need to. Yeah. All right.
On the water subject,
Yeah.
real quick, not necessarily related to this meeting, but are we still having chlorination issues from the breakback last fall?
No.
Okay.
Not working.
Could we check my neighborhoods?
Sure.
If you would, please,
Yeah.
because I've got a few neighbors that have complained that it's still very strong, and I've noticed it too.
Okay.
Like I said, not part of this meeting, but just a request on the side of the town manager hat. Thank you.
What's the issue exactly?
Several, or my neighbors at the bottom of our line, at the back of our neighborhood, are saying that even out on the tap, it's still like a swimming pool. So, last fall, we had that main break in town, I think it was the fall, where we heavily chlorinated the water just to make sure that we stayed in safe levels. I think it was last fall, it might have been, but, yeah, there's still a strong swimming pool taste.
Okay. We'll check it out.
Okay.
So the next topic I've got, this is sort of getting into the brainstorming section of things. So those last two items, we really wanted kind of some clear direction to move forward, but the next items are really sort of broader topics to just sort of think about. Like I said, we're gonna be putting some ideas up later and prioritizing those. So some things to start thinking about in particular are downtown ordinances. So we instituted the downtown overlay district this last year, and we've got one business that's been looking to actually build a new storefront and has been somewhat limited because of some of the restrictions in the downtown overlay district. On the sort of other side of that, we didn't put any restrictions in the downtown overlay district to potentially regulate vacant storefronts, which I know has been something that I've heard a lot about with a couple of different places. And the overlay district and the UDO itself are supposed to be sort of these living documents that we put in place, and then we tweak over the span of their life. So if that's something that we want to potentially revisit and see how some of these specific examples or the broader regulations for vacancies can be addressed, that's something we could potentially look at. Again, don't really need any topics there, but that's a topic that we'll put down and again prioritize here in a little bit. Any questions though while I read this? Can I start our list? Speaking of storefronts, we've already kind of talked about the Town Commons Plaza buildings in front of Town Hall. That's what I've started calling them. It's not official though. So if that's a priority, that's something that we'll be looking at ranking later. So I want to throw those up on the board and onto your pads of paper for thoughts. So let me write. So something I also wanted to talk about in terms of storefronts is, and this is a slightly delicate subject because if I really take a step back and look at things, on the one hand, we want to, where's the mayor go?
Hey, you knew what you were talking about.
Just as
We want to continue and strengthen our partnership with the Broad River Greenway. The other side of that is we have a great, so I just said we want to continue and strengthen our partnership with Broad River Greenway. The other side of that is we have a potential space for a new business in the current Broad River Greenway office that's downtown. That's heavily utilized by Ms. Duran and the work that she does, but it's not a central point for visitors to come ask questions about the Broad River Greenway or participate in different things. So it's an office and it's maybe more storage at some point. So the thought was, do we want to have a discussion about how we could change that and have a potential new storefront downtown without having to build buildings or anything like that. I feel like that should generate a little bit of discussion, but if not, we can just put it on the list and talk about it later. That, like I said, that's kind of a delicate thing. I'm not trying to evict Kim or anything, but I'm also trying to identify spaces where we could bring new businesses in.
What's our agreement with the Broad River Greenway for that space, and are there other options to relocate it to?
As far as I know, we don't have an agreement. When we moved Town Hall buildings, I think we moved her into that space and moved the museum out, is the timeline of hers.
Yes, she had dedicated space in the old town hall and storage capacity. And then, when we were talking about building a new town hall facility, there was some discussion about adding her space, and then over the long run of it, she was just sort of, not necessarily left out, but we were at capacity when we moved into the new town hall. So there wasn't a whole lot of other options, and I think that was a good option at the time. We had different vendors in there at one point. I think we had a tanning salon or something in there. I think it's a great little place, but it's also a historic building for us as well, so we wouldn't want a whole lot of renovation and changes in there, but I don't know, where could we house her if we're not, because I do think it's a great partnership, and I wouldn't want to damage that partnership.
Yeah.
But it is a nice South Main Street storefront, and a great location with parking.
So on the north side of the Greenway, there's some office space in that building, but I think that's Lance's current office. On the south side of the river, there is some space over there. It's similar to the building on the north side. I think it's just used for storage right now, but I think there's a restroom over there. I haven't gone into it, so I don't know what it would look like from an office standpoint, but the other thought I had is the potential to budget some funds for a storage building to go down at the Greenway to say, we don't want to just kick it to the curb and say get out, but we want to try and help relocate and help you have a good spot, but also have a new spot for a business. So,
2 follow-up questions. Do we know who the new business is, and is there interest in shared space? Is that possible? Is that enough, is there enough square footage for that?
That's
Yeah,
probably
it's-
not.
It's
Probably
pretty
not.
tiny, yeah.
Okay.
Um,
The second one is south of the river, is that new campground that they're building.
Mhm.
Is there an opportunity to blend both recreational?
That's a good point.
Because one's a campground and the other one's a greenway space that both love the river. Maybe, is it Jake and, who's the campground? You know,
Tyler, yeah.
maybe they have something to offer her that they could set up as a front for her right there, and be a lot closer to the greenway as well.
That's a good thought.
To me, I mean, most people think the Greenway office is gonna be at the
At
Greenway.
the greenway, yeah.
It makes sense. I guess for me, the main thing is, we're talking about taking a non-revenue stream and turning it into a revenue stream. To me, that would be, but I'm not in favor of, you know, disturbing the relationship there.
Sure,
But
yeah.
to me, and if it's a viable offer for a business, I mean, we wouldn't want to just do this on a whim
Yeah.
either. We wouldn't want to spend our time, you know, if it's, they say, well, so it's firm, the business is, the offer is firm.
No, we don't have an offer from a business. The thought has come from, like Pelicans was looking for a building for 6 or 8 months.
So it's just a concept.
It is, it's just a concept, yeah.
Offer it.
To potentially offer it up for sale.
Yes,
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
but I've had, I've heard from a lot of folks that, you know, we don't have a coffee shop in town. I've actually heard from some Gardner Web staff that they wish they had a coffee shop off premise that they could go and, not disturb the students, and somebody's mentioned an ice cream shop previously, but there are little things that I've heard that we don't have that would be kind of a good fit for some of that, smaller square footage space, but nothing that's firm.
But to me, the other reason for addressing it is, to me, it makes, if possible, for the office to be at the Greenway. I mean, if I were coming to town, I'm looking for the Greenway office, or the Greenway.
Well, I don't know if you guys have ever been out to a campground, but they have those little
Well,
shotgun
Anything.
cabins. I'm thinking one of those would be perfect for the greenway office. And maybe it's not on the campground, but then we find out where they purchase those cabins, and we help the greenway some way.
Yeah.
Purchase one of those to put at near the entrance.
Yeah, I think they have a long-term plan to do an education center and something out the Greenway. This funding, they've never had either the effort or the money to do that down there.
The pool's gonna be open in May.
Yeah.
I mean, I rode down there, and it's huge, Olympic size pool.
Do we have any office space left at Town Hall that she could occupy in the event that we wanted to do that, and then put a storage building at the Greenway?
We don't.
Or something?
I'm not sure how much office time she spends at the
Yeah.
current building. I think it's mostly storage.
Yeah, that's.
I know they operate out of there on music on main nights.
Yeah.
While they're manning the beverage garden. That is very convenient for them to be able to.
I know they had board meetings that, you know, I've seen her up there during the day and things, so she has a space to work out of, but it is, the majority of the space is just for storage.
Then an in-kind contribution from the town could be to provide a storage building off-site at the Greenway, and then
Be great if we did that, and then somehow when we offered the building up for a new business, said, hey, by the way, see that sign on the side of the building, it's the greenway stuff? For these music on Main events, but the greenway, and then it'd be a marketing opportunity for whatever business comes in too.
Yeah. And longer term, if that space transforms there into a little more of a courtyard area, it'd be great for a business to have some outdoor seating that would be right next to the building, but.
It would be it would take the right type of business that wanna go there.
Yeah.
Are the bathrooms handicapped?
I don't think so. Well, no, there's a ramp up into the building, so they may be.
That,
I don't know.
that doesn't necessarily mean the restrooms are
Yeah.
handicapped. And to me, that would be, that'd be a major expense there. But,
If it's something we wanna explore, I can
I think it's worth exploring.
start exploring,
I do.
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
For me, the main reason is that I think the Greenway office, if possible, should be at the Greenway. And she spends most of her time there anyway.
All right. I had town and gown on the list as something to talk about. We've already touched on that a little bit. I mentioned previously an advisory board, and we're getting close to sending out letters to sort of invite folks to be part of that. My vision for that is for it to be a 12 or 14 member board with a couple of you all, a few Gardner Webb staff, and probably student government folks, some local business owners, economic development, chamber of commerce, those type people, and a group that meets maybe 2 or 3 times a year, has some big discussions, and then maybe some smaller groups from that committee sort of break off and tackle some different issues, or hopefully come up with some new ideas for things. So just wanted to kind of revisit that. If you all have any suggestions for who should be a part of that, just let me know. Doesn't have to be today. But the other thing, in just thinking through that, is what happens with the amphitheater. We already kind of covered that. We haven't had any of those discussions yet with Gardner Webb. They did have a meeting a couple of weeks ago where they were talking about how to sort of kick off the opening of the amphitheater. They really hope that it'll be ready in time for homecoming this fall, but that's sort of iffy. They project that it'll be ready around that time, so barring no delays, which always happen. There'll be something that'll be ongoing though. I think we're on the same page in terms of potentially wanting to use it for some things, and that should be a partnership. But I'm not sure how that'll look, so we'll keep pursuing it though.
But isn't it necessarily a partnership? Isn't that how the funding happened?
We definitely assisted in lobbying for the funding. The funding went from the state directly to Gardner Webb though.
So it didn't come through the county and the town?
It may have come through the county, but my understanding was that it went directly to Gardner Webb.
Okay.
But no, it didn't come to the town. But
We had to vote on it though, right? Like, we were okay with Cleveland County giving it to Gardner Webb?
I think we voted on a letter of support.
Okay.
To just send to representatives that said, we're supportive of this being a regional cultural sort of attraction.
I see.
Which the county did as well, so it was a joint effort, but yeah, funding was theirs. Another thought with Town and Gown that was pitched to us is potentially having some contribution or membership in the Bulldog Club. I don't know if that's something that we want to explore. I know that's stuff going across the street, but I think that's also some sort of benefit and support and buy-in from the town. But I'm not sure how I feel about that, but that's something that was requested of us, and I didn't think it was a terrible idea, so I wanted to kind of throw it out there.
Requested by who?
The new director of the Bulldog Club,
Oh,
just
I
if
know
we would
the
have,
membership's way down.
would just have any interest in.
Probably double the price. I mean, they literally
Did it?
double the price.
Okay.
From 500, we got tickets to all the sports, 2 tickets, to $1,000, and they gave you the right to buy tickets at a reduced price.
Oh.
And
Oh,
pay
wow.
$10 per.
Jeez.
So the membership, one gentleman, every time I'm around him, he talks about it. He's been a member ever since the Bulldog Club's been there.
Yeah.
He's not a member anymore.
I haven't explored any of the pricing yet, because we're not talking about numbers today. But yeah, just want to, again, it was kind of pitched to us, and I thought, well, it's a small way for us to contribute, but do we want to do that and be part of that? I don't know. So, don't necessarily need an answer today, but again, something I wanted to kind of put out there. We can talk about it at budget time. If somebody really likes it, we can prioritize it later. So, any other thoughts or suggestions for Town and Gown? Improvements or changes or anything like that?
I think there's low, mid, I don't know. I guess I was about to call myself mid-level. I'm mid-level. But they invited us to be a part of the podcast,
Yeah.
representing Webstock. Nate is good to be at our meetings every month and develop that type of relationship. And we've all known David for a long time. I think that continuing to invest in the university, maintaining those relationships, knowing that the town of Bowling Springs is gonna be gone, is gonna be here when I'm gone, and Garden Webb's gonna be here most likely, you know, for decades and decades to come. And that maintaining the relationship between the two institutions, I think, is really important.
Yeah.
Whether it's supporting I mean, they do have plays in that theater there, and so showing support to the students at the student level from the town, so that there's, and maybe that's the approach, you know, maybe that's the buy-in. And so I think that's where Town and Gown comes in, and then students have at least somewhat of a voice, somewhat of shared input into what's happening in the town as well, so that we can maybe get past this side and that side of the street and realize the potential, I guess. But that's, I think there's some positive things to continue to build on, even though other areas are more difficult.
That's a good way to put it. So the next area I had, sort of ties back into some discussion we had last year, about staffing. We, tried really hard, but we can't keep racing around until, or can't keep racing around after June. Yeah, everybody throws their stressful out now. And we applied for the fellow program again, and we were not successful in that, so we won't have another fellow, although they wouldn't have been as good.
Exactly.
So last year the discussion was that we would talk about a planner or a grant writer during the budget process, and we decided to go the fellow route. Town manager hat. I think we should continue that discussion again during the budget process, regardless of what that looks like. We have some options. I mean, last year it was full-time employee, it was funds for grant writing. The Foothills COG has really ramped up with the new director this year, so they're going to be offering more grant writing services and things. So again, I think we can still have that discussion, but the facilitator hat back on. We also have an open position in code enforcement that has worked really well with the employee that we had there. You know, when I first came on, town manager hat, we had some issues that we needed to address, and we've addressed a lot of those sort of lingering long-term issues. We still have some that are out there, and then we have the smaller, just ongoing things. So I think it's important for us to take a look at that and determine what that looks like moving forward. Is it a full-time position? Again, another service that the Foothills COG will offer is potentially code enforcement this coming year. So do we want to contract with them? Does that sort of shift make sense? And then how does that affect the police department? Because that was a sworn police officer position. And we have had some difficulty lately recruiting police officers. It's a hard time for most all the departments. So taking a look at staffing specifically within that department, that position, and then in the planner grant writing position as well. And again, one of those broad goals from last year, which I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, was staffing, and we'll check in on those sort of broad goals later and make sure that staffing and those other things are still a priority. And if they're not, we'll shift them, but if they are, we can kind of continue those talks.
But we could reclassify the code position, take that salary, put it into, add money to it, and have a city planner that would also be able to code for it.
We could. That could, yeah.
I mean, that was one of the discussions originally was, how much money was the salary and how much code enforcement was done, and could it be in an administrative role instead of a law enforcement role?
Yeah.
Because city planner, to me, is a huge portion of what we're doing. We're looking at requests for proposals, we're looking at land use, we're looking at all these things, and that's something, you got a lot of hats that you're wearing. Okay, today I'm meeting with all these people. And city planner could just fill that role, could talk about code enforcement, and then could move forward on those things. So I wouldn't want to lose that police position either. I mean, we would look at trying to figure out how to save and salvage that, but it's really, really important to me that we have that city planner and the code enforcement in place. Especially with the business agreement plans and all moving forward. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah.
I agree, even though I think the foothills is a good option, I think having our own, it works for us. If they do their job, could easily pay their salary.
Well, and,
But that's difficult, I mean, we're talking about staffing, that's always, what, 80% of our budget is staff? Or
something
70?
like that, yeah, it's,
And every time we
It's
add
a high.
positions, then, you get the best person by paying the most money and giving the most benefits, right?
yeah.
And that goes back to what Pat talks about a lot, and that's the funding, where we're gonna get the money, right? So, anyway, that's a lot of stuff to consider and discuss.
Yeah, I should have written staffing in all caps. That's a big one.
Well, how effective is Foothills? I know they've had a lot of turnover in the past couple of years. I mean, they're like everybody else, they've had a lot of turnover, a lot of vacant positions.
Yeah.
They didn't have a director for a good while.
They're in a good spot now. They've got a new director for community and economic development that used to work for the city of Shelby as a planner. He's got I think he's a planner that's working underneath him, that's handled some of our code enforcement and planning issues that have come up. They just hired another position within that department. They would hire a full-time person to do code enforcement throughout the region, and I think they also have a grant writer that's just a specific grant writer in that department as well. So they're doing well.
How much grant money have we gotten last year?
I was bragging to Mayor Thomas yesterday that we got $675,000, and then I realized that's in the last 2 years, so.
Well, last 2 years.
Yeah, I just have to keep a running total.
And, well, my reason for the last year was how many of those grants and things that we do in-house?
Pretty much all of them. We had some help with some of them.
So, I mean, to me, there's the rubber meets the road, is how much bang do you get for the buck? You know, they, definitely more than the salary,
Mhm.
so that personally, the city personally paid for us, get that over problem.
Yeah.
From what I think we paid,
Mm-hmm, no, for sure.
so.
And then another thing to look at, what I'd like to do when we start the budget process is have a proposal from Foothills for all those different areas, and add housing onto that we talked about at the last meeting, when Dana was there. So seeing what that looks like in terms of costs and being involved in that program, with the other programs as well. Reminded me though that another conversation I've had, sort of going back to Town and Gown, is Gardner Webb has been looking for a grant writer to be on staff for helping them write grants. They just frankly have that position budgeted too low. It's been open for more than a year, I think. So I've been trying to think, is there a way for us to potentially contract with a group or a grant writer that would do contract work and sort of pool those funds for that person? I mean, have them sort of separate, and they'd obviously be working on separate projects, but is there a way to sort of beef that up to get more bang for our buck? So I don't know that that's feasible, but trying to
Who
help.
has people like that? I mean,
There'd be freelance grant writers.
Okay.
I've gotten some association contacts that I'd reach out to if we wanted to move forward with that. And I think what I would do is, Town Manager is move forward with looking at a proposal for us and how much that would cost as one of our options. So we could go with Foothills, we could go with a planner in-house, or we could go with X number of dollars budgeted for a contract person. And then see if that contract person would also be interested in doing Gardner Webb work. And that was the same person, but it's kind of two different contracts. And, so big staffing issues for sure.
Well, I think we did the fellow as a half step, to say, how effective is it, and I think it was very effective, so, yeah, I'll be in favor of looking at adding a planner, depending on what that job description actually is,
Okay.
because I have a hard time understanding that.
All right. Okay.
It's not in my wheelhouse.
Well, and Chief Phillips and Ms. Weasley did a wonderful job on the code enforcement. I mean, they tackle some very heavy issues, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a huge component of that too. We don't wanna lose sight of, because again, we're talking about making the town look nice and beautiful and then, but I just didn't want to pass by that much.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because sometimes it's, you know, we can administratively send out cards and letters and things, but sometimes when you have to go have those conversations, it's nice to have the chief of police or a police officer with, you know, with you. So yeah, what's that balance look like is gonna be a tough question to answer. The other thing along with staffing, that we've talked about previously, will we increase the amount of life insurance for employees, 6 months or so, well, back in January, I think. So it's 1 times your yearly salary up to $50,000. And I know I heard some comments about maybe why don't we just look at offering $50,000 for all employees. And we also had some mention, I think maybe Cheryl mentioned this during her report, about, well, yeah, she did a benefit study as part of that. Do we want to look at potentially providing dental and vision insurance as an incentive for current and future employees? I see that a little bit as a town manager recruitment tool for folks that's a little bit more money in their pocket, and it's fairly low cost. So something for us to look at and potentially prioritize.
I think that'd be complementary to our recent market study on wages, right? And that's just another thing to keep us competitive with surrounding areas.
Well, the state, we just ended the department, I mean, we're 15 officers down. They've done a $7,000 sign-on bonus. They're gonna give us $2,500 for recruiting people that stay every, I mean, but you know who we're getting? Nobody.
Yeah.
And so to add things like some of these benefits to sweeten it up, you know, there's not a lot of places that offer dental or vision as a part of their benefit package, or even, you know, the life insurance. And then we have a lot of people who are brand new in positions, and they don't really care about any of that stuff. They just want the most money they can make at that time period, because they know they're gonna move on in a year or 2 years. But it's a huge problem for everybody. And I think we look at our benefits package, strengthen it. We've got a great place to work, a great environment. That would help us with recruitment and retention. So. And plus the employees that have already been here, that would help them just go get your eye exam and maybe get some benefit on glasses, or whatever it is.
All right. Any other thoughts there on staffing? All right. We have, we previously talked about murals. We put the mural on the side of the Bright River Greenway office. We looked at, potentially some other murals, maybe reviving the mural on North Main Street at the, next to the old John Deere dealership where it's the bicyclists. We talked about potential mural on the old concrete water tank that we have underneath the new water tank. If that's something that we still want to pursue, then we could look at options for that. I know we've got, from town manager perspective, I can go pick out places to put murals and we can go get, ideas and put them up there, but I don't know what that process needs to look like. If it's a committie, if it's a council decision, if it's something bigger than that, or if we're overthinking it and it's, you just go ask the Beesons or whoever owns that building with the bicycles on if they want us to repaint it. So just wanted to kind of check in and see if that's still a priority and how we might want to move forward there.
I think if there's an opportunity that we could market to some real estate owners that we want to do a beautification, or, just add some art to town, and we're offering to do it, and we have artists out there that want to donate their time, and we maybe supply the paint or whatever. I think that's a cheap route to sprucing up the town a little bit. So, and if I own a building, like the bicycle shop, and time can we say, hey, I'm gonna paint the whole side white and put a mural on it, how about it, guys? You know what I mean?
And the mural you're talking about there, the guy that did it for free.
Oh, really?
tickets from the
Criteria.
bicycle
Yeah.
group. He did it for,
That's what
just
I forgot about that.
for community service.
Yeah.
Have they give any indication of what they might want to do with that property when Hammett's gone from there?
Well, I know that, Bud Emmerich, he could stay there as a car lot for a year, and then after that, he has to, but he's retiring, I think, last time I looked, there was a lot, he didn't have one or two vehicles. So I'm not sure, but the other thing I thought too is, I don't know how the Earl Scruggs would think about this, but possibility of some type of an Earl Scruggs mural, you know. We wouldn't wanna do anything that the Earl Scruggs Center wouldn't approve, but maybe we could say, the real home of Earl Scruggs. No, that's not gonna fly, but, you know, I mean, that'd be something, you know, that possibly,
Yeah, you go through Marshall, North Carolina, you see Randy Travis.
That's right, yeah.
So-
yeah.
But yeah, I want us to make sure that I think what you were talking about is how do we have control over that and what should be painted, where should be painted,
Yeah.
and who should control that. Because I would want to focus on cultural or connectivity, community connectivity things, not just whatever somebody wanted to paint.
Yeah.
But if it's their building, they can paint whatever they want to. I guess within, if it falls, is that a sign ordinance? Is that, I mean,
Yeah, what is that?
how's that controlled? But I
It's,
think a lot of communities, if you go around, you'll see those things, and it adds color and a cultural aspect to it that we sort of lack at times.
Yeah.
Not that we're not cultured, but we, you know, what I'm saying, just we have things, Earl Scruggs, we have those things that are good connectivity.
And the other thought is, or the other item is, Pelicans is potentially, gonna paint a mural on the backside of their building. They've asked about that. I think they're exploring that internally. It has to be approved by corporate and that kind of stuff, but, that would be a nice addition there, I think. Okay.
They're open now, right?
They are. Okay, well, we'll look to kind of move forward with some thoughts there. I kind of like the idea of maybe having some sort of application if somebody would want to participate in that and seeing what sort of attention we can drum up that way.
And I also think, you know, having a committee made up of citizens or maybe business owners, you know, that kind of gets more involvement from them rather than us just saying, yeah, you can do that, or no, you can't.
Right.
Although I think the ultimate should probably, somebody has to be in charge, but I think more we could get
Make a recommendation.
community input from that, would be better.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's some business owner that doesn't know more history than Tommy. Can have that relationship.
That's just being old.
But I thought we
I didn't say that.
Murals weren't regulated, but we don't regulate murals.
Yeah, we don't.
Yeah, I had a pastor who asked me, you know, could they put anything up on the side of the building, and I think our ordinance says pretty much,
Yeah, it's pretty
you
much
know,
it.
free
Freedom of
speech.
speech, right?
Mhm.
Even though we might be adamantly opposed to it, they own the building.
Yeah.
I mean, we could, it could be argued that the downtown overlay district says that, you know, you can only use these colors for the exterior of your building, and so a mural, you know, violates that. I don't think I would interpret it that way. I'd wanna go back and look at it if that was ever the question, but yeah, really, other than that, we don't have anything in there that says.
Showing my age, there used to be a gentleman who lived south of town on Holly Hill Road, he got a fence. You better remember, he used to paint things on his fence, very offensive things on his fence. The fence rotted down, his health is not good, but, I mean, really offensive. On his fence, his fence.
I do like the idea of having a committee though, because then we
Yeah,
can
I think more
we may not have control of it, but we can influence
Sure.
kind of some of the content that goes into
You know, we
it.
kind of determine who would be good on the committee, you know.
Yeah.
I think more involvement we get from them. And I was surprised how much, talk and that the mural on the side of the museum.
Yeah.
Created, you know, and good stuff, it was all good.
I
already kinda talked about recreation. We'll have the Parks Master Plan, agreement coming in April. Another, gosh, I had more town and gown ideas than I thought. So another, another thing that I've, had a brief discussion with one of the, recreation, people over at Gardner Webb about is, potential partnership on some, fitness stations that would be around the Stadium Drive area. His thought was that, you know, we have a lot of residents that utilize that as a walking trail, and they thought about putting some sort of outdoor active fitness stations there, and asked if that's something we'd be willing to partner on. I told him I thought it was a good idea, but to get me some, you know, cost estimates and kind of some preliminary stuff of what he was thinking. So I don't have that yet, but you know, come budget time, if that's something I think that we're still interested in, we wanna look at, it could be a potential addition, for something that's kind of away from our park, but another sort of community amenity that people could use. Then of course we've got the loop that would hopefully tie in, to downtown, to the streetscape project, and I've been trying to think through how we can make more of a direct connection to our park, for Gardner Webb students, and obviously I think the first way is to connect it off of Main Street there, but then try and build on getting some of those folks across the street, and having some different amenities for different age, folks as well. You know, I think the master planning process will be, interesting to see what the use of the current space, could look like, and how that affects what the Y currently uses it for. The YMCA is trying to, I think they're asking for some money from the state for some additional fields and amenities over at the Ruby location, so not knowing how that'll time up with our parks master planning process, it could be good if they receive some money to do some things over on their, property, and would free up some of our space to kind of transform some of that, so. I know that's an ongoing partnership that we've got, but, I'm curious to see how that changes and shifts. Any other thoughts on parks, recreation, YMCA?
I know that Morganton, park system has those fitness stations, and I've seen them at Banner Elk, you know, on their walking trail. And they're relatively small little stations with a little sign that says, you know, what are provided by the town, so.
Yeah.
And I always enjoy just going to those places, and I don't know that I'm working out on the fitness station, but just, you know, that they're there, and so. I think that would be a small thing that we could do. I don't know what the cost would be on those things, but on the flip side, I don't know how many people would use it either, so.
I've seen them at several parks, and most of the time it's just carefully crafted, treated timber with some bars and handles on it.
Yes.
There's a little sign of what to do there, you know, pull-up station or just a handle you grab on. Or a piece of timber that looks like a bench, and you put your leg up on it and stretch, and pretty low maintenance, easy to install.
Yeah.
One of the things I'd be concerned about if we put them over on Stadium Drive would be access. You know, are they gonna say, we're having a football game, you can't come? My wife actually wanted to go watch a tennis match on the day they were having a football game. She couldn't park without paying $10. They told her she could park at the church and walk. That was David Waycaster who told her that, by the way. So she wanted to watch a tennis match, it had nothing to do with the football game. She's going on there, she had to pay $10 cash.
Yep, they are charging.
Back home.
They charging that now.
So I wanna make sure that that wasn't gonna happen, somebody wants
Yeah.
to go. We should have access anytime, if we're involved in it. And that should be clarified up front, you know, that you're not gonna be able to say, hey, football game going on, you can't go today.
Okay.
They also block their tennis courts now, so the community can't go play tennis.
All right, any other thoughts on recreation? So I wanted to yield some time to the mayor to talk about potential partnerships with the Earl Scruggs Center.
And I made sure that we could, mention this today. The Earl Scruggs Center got an anonymous donation. And, the hope is to be able to acquire the old Earl Scruggs home, which is on Riverside Road. It's not in great condition. It does have a tin roof, so that's the hope that maybe it can be salvaged in some way. There is an attempt right now to communicate with the current owners to see if it's even a possibility of them selling how much ever of that particular plot. But the idea from Earl Scruggs Center is, the initial idea is to restore the area, restore the home, and then have it as a destination, certainly during the Earl Scruggs concert, the Earl Scruggs, what do they call that? Festival, yeah. But then we thought about other times, like at Webstock, things like that, where it may not be open all the time, but that it would be open certain times of the year. But the idea being that perhaps it would be owned or jointly owned, that all this is in the initial phases. The question here is how much would we be in favor, and how much would we want to be involved in, perhaps on the ownership stake, where we're the ones, where the town is maintaining the old home place. What are other possibilities if it isn't for sale, but if the plot of land isn't for sale, but they would be willing to allow us to relocate the home to some of the area that we have near the Greenway. The question, I think, from the Earl Scruggs board is what the appetite from town council and Bowling Springs, because they do recognize, I mean, what you were saying earlier, Marty, is they do know that, I mean, Earl Scruggs from Flint Hill. I mean, he's from, that's where he grew up, right there in that house. So we have more of a claim to the home of Earl Scruggs than Shelby does, and they recognize that at the Earl Scruggs Center. So there is hope to acquire that land. At this point, JT recognizes it may be a non-starter altogether. People may not be willing to sell. But if it is, if they are, what partnership would the town be open to? I know that's kind of general and vague, but that's kind of where the process is at this point, until there can be confirmation of a purchase, and they do want to enter into a partnership with the town of Bowling Springs. And then my thought on all that is exactly, murals in town, and part of our music on Main is, brought to you by Earl Scruggs, those types of things where we bring in local musicians, not just pickers, but any type of local musicians. Earl influenced so many different kinds of people. So to me, it would offer us a possibility of a tie-in culturally to the Greenway area, Earl Scruggs, Bowling Springs, with this prospect, that you are talking about in terms of the Old Town Hall area, just that whole cultural piece. But anyway, I don't know what questions or ideas y'all have on that possibility.
I'd be in favor of staying in that conversation as long as possible.
Okay.
Till you got, I would think if we have that opportunity, we should act on it.
Okay.
Like I said, it's a little early to decide exactly what, but I certainly would hope we would be interested in that partnership, because I could see it being a great partnership. I'm just sitting here thinking, now at the Earl Scruggs Center, every now and then they have, where they just get out on the lawn where they're having those at its own place.
Yeah. Yeah.
On a Friday night, and you have a food truck or something.
Yeah. Fundraising dinners, all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
that kind of thing. I think it would be a great opportunity. Plus, it would give us a buy-in with the Earl Scruggs Center to get a little closer to where Earl Scruggs actually. So I would be in favor of staying in that conversation as long as necessary, and not letting that opportunity pass lightly. That's me. And the possibility was you're gonna have to move the house, I would think. If that's the case, we wanna move it closer to our town.
Yeah, I know JT Scruggs
Do
doesn't.
you know who owns the property, by the way?
I think that I think that Anthony's,
Anthony.
yeah,
Who?
Sheena Anthony.
Sheena Anthony.
and there's some,
Is that, Donald's daughter? Do you know? I don't know.
I don't know.
No, I don't know her maiden name, she married into it.
I think that JT Scruggs in particular, the last case scenario is he would wanna move it, he wants to leave it where it was, but he didn't shut that idea down, cause he recognizes that
If that came to it.
if it came to it, then
Naturally be better.
salvaging it would be better.
Site if possible.
But they, the center does a lot of good events with kids and have, banjo workshops and things like that where it's well attended with the elementary schools and things like that, and so bringing in, I think there's good potential, I do, I don't know what the cost will be and how much they'll be able to acquire it for, and, how much money will be left over for them to restore it, all of that will be on their end, that initial, cost. For the cost to the town would be in maintaining the structure going forward, those types of things. And, how often is it gonna be opened, who's gonna police the area to make sure there isn't damage, those types of questions are still just all floating around, and we can't really go any further until there's a potential sale, but, really what the Earl Scruggs Board was interested in is there an appetite from the council to move forward? And I
I'd
think
say yes.
at least staying in the conversation, I think that's what they were wanting to hear.
It's got plenty of upside.
Yeah.
Potential.
Possible grant money too,
Sure.
for historic purposes.
That's a good point, Tommy. Maybe that's something we can help with the Earl Scruggs Center, as well as having a local municipality vouch for the historical value as well, not just typically historic preservations look to the local councils or community governments,
Yeah.
so.
How does it get listed as a historical site? I mean, there's a process for that, right?
There is.
Yeah, there is, I'm not familiar with it, but yeah, we wanna go through that, I think, to,
Probably
Whether it's
requires a petition from the property owner as well too,
yeah.
so.
Cool. So what other ideas, what haven't we talked about, what's something good that we wanna keep doing, what's something not so good that we wanna change?
I work very much, I see housing up there, we're very much interested in getting back into partnership for the
Yes.
housing, affordable housing is, to me, is critical to our growth. So, I think we should definitely keep that on the drawing board.
What's the latest on the townhomes? Is it south of town there, I guess?
I got,
The mechanic shop?
yeah, yeah.
Humphreys, thank you.
I have no good news on that, but I got other good news.
Hear the bad stuff first.
Last weekend or weekend before, I was reading some article in the Charlotte Business Journal about the housing market, still going strong, but how it was trending down towards like smaller homes and things like that. So I sent that article to those two gentlemen that had that property rezoned and said, hey, it's all this, I'm just thinking about y'all. Haven't heard anything. I think I actually reached out to them like 6 or 8 months ago and didn't hear anything. I noticed on GIS that the property had been transferred to an individual. So I don't know if that was for tax or holding purposes, or if they sold it to somebody who wants to develop it. same person owns only one other like random parcel in Kings Mountain that I found. So I'm not sure what's going on with that one. However, I sent the same article to Tyler Watts, who's involved in the townhome project across from the Masonic Lodge. It's been there, I guess it used to be, I don't know if it used to be single family or it's always been.
They didn't even change it to single family.
Yeah. Yeah. So he said that they sent the project out for bid last year, and it, of course, came back much higher than they anticipated. So his response was that they were gonna look at it again in 2024. I did send a note to Alan, the community and economic development coordinator at Foothills, that said, I said, what are other towns doing to sort of incentivize this? Because if it's too expensive for him, but if the town's able to help out with some sort of incentive, you know, can we maybe get that moving a little bit quicker? He's supposed to send me some draft policies from Shelby and Forest City, I think. And then I also sent the article to a gentleman that Mike and I met with maybe a year ago about some property on College Farm in South Main, and it was for, I want to say it was for like 60 single-family homes. Does that sound right, Mike? Somewhere around there?
Yes.
Hadn't heard anything from him. He said, he emailed me right back, said, I've been tied up with some other properties, but Bowling Springs is next on the list. So he said that's still moving forward, so I'm excited about that. But yeah.
Cool. What about the north of town, it's on Barclay, you know, with the building built, you know, she's got a road back
Yeah.
there, what's going on with that?
I haven't heard anything recently. It's the Stitzels.
No, it's Stitzel.
Yeah, last,
Stitzel, is it?
yeah, I think
On
Stitzels
Barclay.
did
I thought it was, Schufert. I don't know.
Oh, Barclay. I'm thinking of,
Right on the edge of town, not by
I'm thinking of the road off to the left.
Yeah, that's
You're
exactly.
talking about James Levinson.
Yeah, I'm talking about the road off James Lawrence. Yeah, that's the Stitzels.
They built a nice structure there, an office, storage
Yeah.
building
Yeah,
there, he's got a road.
Right on the other side of the real property.